Chris, what's happening? Welcome back. Good to see you.
Saddle. Good to see you too, man.
Been a minute.
It has been a busy end of the summer, no doubt about that.
Yeah, for sure. I just got back from the Foot and Ankle Society meeting. That was a great meeting.
Awesome. And I'm headed out to the Ortho Summit this weekend.
Always a good party in Vegas.
Yeah.
So hopefully you won't get married by Elvis or marry Elvis for that matter.
Yeah. And then on top of that, it's like, I'm just excited to be heading back into the fall season as it relates to the meetings. You take that gap in the middle, and I'm sure I get it and everything else, but something about being back in synergy with everyone.
Yeah. It's the fall season. It's the rush to the final part of the year. And it's time for my wife to make the pumpkin squares that I love so much. Keep bugging her. Still too hot.
Yeah. If it's 95, it doesn't match.
Yeah, for sure. But she'll get around to it. But anyway, today we're honored to have our friend Greg Parranto and Dr. Brent Norris, who are founders of Endeavor Orthopaedics. Chris, you and I have met them at MNVC, which is coming up, quick plug, in a few weeks. Dr. Norris has presented his platform a few times, and each time I've seen it, I was just, this is a problem that has yet to be solved. And I think maybe Dr. Norris and Greg have come up with a great solution. So we're looking forward to having both Dr. Norris and Greg on. So let's bring them in.
Absolutely.
Hey, guys.
Hey there.
There they are.
Welcome to the MedTech Jam Session.
Appreciate you having us here.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you both. As I mentioned, we have gotten to know you over the past couple of years, and we're curious to hear your story. I think our listeners are curious to hear your story, because anytime you have a surgeon founder, there's usually a big light bulb, big aha moment that happens in the operating room.
Absolutely.
And I'm curious to know what that aha moment was for you with this. What problem were you faced with that led you to do something as crazy as start a company?
That's a great question, but I tell you, it's a pretty simple answer for me. I had an epiphany. I can remember the exact months. It was September and October of 2012. And I had two patients in a row that came in with patella fractures. And I thought I had those things figured out. I mean, I was using kind of what our current state of the art was then, which was cannulated screws and some kind of tension band wire or suture that went through these cannulated screws. And that was supposed to hold things together for us. And those two people promptly failed, each one of them, about 2 weeks post-op. And they came back in with failed hardware. And I started thinking, maybe we don't have a solution to this. And I looked back at the literature, and we'd gone from K-wires, which were 1960s technology, to cannulated screws. And technically, those are lag screws. And if you leave those lag screws unprotected, even though you have a tension band in there, there's a high likelihood of failure for lag screws. They really need to be neutralized. And so I started thinking, okay, well, what's better than these lag screws? And I went to, maybe I can put a plate in there, a real low profile plate, and try to hold this a little better. That'll neutralize it with or without those lag screws. Sometimes you have 2 or 3 parts, 4 parts. You need some independent screws to bring the pieces together, but then you really need to kind of neutralize it. And so we went to trying to put plates on, really thin plates that there was none on the market for the patella. We just took them off the foot set and really low profile things and made them work on the patella. And we started seeing some better results. They weren't perfect, but they were certainly better. And so that evolution was, okay, why are we still occasionally failing with these things? And again, it goes back to neutralization of the forces acting on those independent fragments. So the plate made it better, but the quadricep forces across the knee they're not neutralized. And so this fracture, along with some others we can talk about soon, would be a very difficult fracture to hold because it's got tremendous forces acting on them. When you try to bend your knee, you rise from a chair, it's like 6 times your body weight. It's a huge force across your knee. So I felt like we had to have something that would give us neutralization of the bony fragments, but also neutralization of soft tissue forces acting on it. So I just said, we've got to find a way to neutralize these forces. So I started toying with ways of getting connectivity with some kind of suture, wire, something that would neutralize the forces of soft tissues, but tethered back to the plate. So
how did you tell us a little bit about the biomechanics of the patella tendon, the patellofemoral, the quadriceps mechanism, and why is that important for the fixation. Speak a little bit more about that.
So the extensor mechanism of your knee is critical for gait and for climbing up from a chair, for just walking normally. You really can't walk if you don't have a quadricep mechanism. So that's the extensor mechanism. It goes from quadricep muscle, which is a huge muscle in our leg, four separate muscles that come together into the patella tendon, patella ligament, if you would. And it goes to bone on the superior surface of the patella. And then that patella acts like a kind of a fulcrum, if you would, a sesamoid bone that allows you to attach the inferior patella tendon from the inferior part of the pole down to the tibial tubercle, which the force is directed across that kneecap or patella and allows you to extend your knee. So it's truly just an extension of the muscle, but as it's crossing the joint, it acts like a firm, stiff fulcrum to actually elicit the forces across the knee to the tibia to get it to do extension. So
I'm going to go back to my PT days. I don't think we talked about this. I was a physical therapist in my first career.
Nice.
The forces acting on the patella are coming in different directions, though, right? Because it's called a quadriceps because it's made up of 4 different muscles, and they pull in slightly different directions. Which did that make the problem more challenging?
It does. It does. I mean, I can imagine all those 4 directions you just said. So let me just elaborate a little bit more. You have the central ones coming through, which are going to be essentially in line with the quadricep, and then you have the retinaculum coming from the sides, medial. So if you have a multi-fragment patella, those forces are going to act on each one of those. So if you don't capture them correctly, then you can actually lose those fragments. They can be pulled away. So that's what our plate's trying to do, is to capture a wide variety of those forces that are acting on it. And the soft tissue connectivity we have does that. It does help us gather that forces correctly. So.
Nice. What do you feel like is the next bastion? Because I think it's brilliant coming with the patella first. I really do. Because if you think about it, just to the point you've learned in the last 13 years, right, is that this is incremental, in my opinion, in terms of its utilization. It's not really cannibalistic because it's so different, I think. Right?
No, it is. Totally.
Yeah. And so with that, what do you think is the next most incremental to your bag?
Well, I mean, obviously, when you say incremental, I think it's still, patella fractures are still being treated with with cannulated screws and tension bands. So we haven't really, we've moved the needle. People are moving to plating patellas now. Yeah. And then getting our product out to market is showing them the importance of soft tissue neutralization.
Okay.
So that is the incremental steps that we're taking. And I think you're right. That's the critical part of what our plate does, is it adds a plate to neutralize the bony fragments, but you got to neutralize the soft tissues too. Can this be extrapolated to other areas of the body? Certainly. And that when I had the epiphany about the patella failures that I had and sat down and drew it out on a paper napkin, essentially, it's just typical what you hear about innovation. Yeah. I did just that. and I started thinking, where else in the body is this happening? And it's happening in several places. It's happening in the greater tuberosity. That's up in the shoulder. It's happening in the olecranon around the elbow. Enteric fractures that occur around the hip, especially around total hips sometimes, or vision total hips. You have to neutralize all those forces that are acting on it. These are huge muscles. Yeah. And so I just started toying with it, and with Dana Funk, another co-founder, he was kind of in between jobs and said he had a medical business of his own. He said, let's pursue this. So we patented those things and surprisingly got patents on all 4 of those things within 2 years. So we were running. It was a pretty quick turnaround for the soft tissue connectivity. And then it was a matter of trying to get this idea launched. And I've learned a whole lot about that, but that's not the gist of this podcast. So I'll say the take-home message is, don't go to the bigs with just the patent. Okay, you gotta develop it yourself. Don't waste your time trying to get them to take on your project. They won't do it. They want it de-risked, completely de-risked. They don't want to have any risk and pour money into something that's not working. So you have to kind of take that on yourself. And
definitely.
Well, talk a little bit more about that, Dr. Norris. And now you brought Greg on to help you get a little closer to the finish line. From one surgeon to, we have surgeons who listen and surgeons who are entrepreneurs and inventors like yourself. Talk about the product development process and how it evolved to where you are now.
So when we had our patents, we were like, okay, this is great. We're home. Well, you're really not home. A patent's a great thing to have. Don't get me wrong. But if you want to commercialize it, it's got to be something that just moves the needle so much. And then if you look at these fractures that we're talking about, they're not occurring 60,000. I'm sure to say it. They're not occurring 100 to 200,000 a year cases, which would be an interest to anybody that see a new product if you're going to get an immediate return. These things are maybe the patella is 50,000, the olecranon's probably a little bit more than that. Tuberosity is probably somewhere in that area, a little bit more. So it didn't really incite them. They didn't look at it as an orphan drug by any means, but they wanted you to go ahead, go prove it, make sure your stuff's going to work.
Right.
And we'll pay you more for it. That's actually, I got that from one of the CEOs I talked to. We buy it now, it may not work, I've wasted money. You go prove it, it works, and we'll just pay more for it. So that's their mindset.
Yeah. So, totally it is. And I've been doing M&A on the buy and the sell side now for 18 years. And it is fascinating how that shift has happened in the last 20 years to where it used to be exactly what you described, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting but as a CEO, right, as founders, this journey is one of the most remarkable things that we ever get to experience.
No, it's true. I knew I couldn't do it myself, so I tried to surround it with people I trust and are smarter than I am in certain areas. So I knew that Dana had a business sense. He ran a company and had medical background, and so we just, if I could have found some other friend that was really wealthy that could help me find funds, that would have been great. But we did finally raise enough cash, started through the FDA process. So that's the next step. If you're going to commercialize something, you have to get through the FDA. And that product nowadays is probably $500,000 to $750,000 to get through the FDA. Maybe it's less, but it's still a lot of money. You've got to be willing to put the time and effort into that. That's a long process. It took us probably, Greg, maybe a year and a half? I mean,
at least, I think it was I joined
it was bad because the money we raised took so long because I wasted time, like you said earlier, Mike, that we definitely shouldn't have gone to the bigs trying to sell this thing. We should have just bootstrapped it early. I wasted probably 3 to 4 years trying to get one of the big companies to take it on.
Yeah.
And so we didn't really get the money until like pre-COVID. And then our FDA process started in the COVID era, which really bogged us down.
Slowed everything down, yeah.
No doubt.
I think the FDA is better now. You probably get it across the finish line 6 to 9 months, but ours took probably a year and a half.
Yeah.
Did you partner with a contract developer and contract manufacturer?
We did.
Yeah.
A little Coors Tech. Was that right?
We know Coors Tech, yeah.
Ogden, Utah.
Yeah.
I think they've been bought out, or maybe they're still there, but they're doing less of that. But they did a great job with us. We looked at Capstone as well. We talked to them for a while. We went with Coors Tech. So it's been a good relationship. We developed the product together, and they helped us get across the finish line. So
one of the things that I think is fascinating about this is you guys continue to execute on commercialization is it's different enough of a technology that it should lower this crazy high bar that VAC committees have put in place. What are you seeing and experiencing in that regard?
I still think it's a big process, and we brought Greg on to commercialize. I mean, he's got a significant background. I'll let him speak more to that, but from my standpoint, you still have to have the value. They have to see the value, and Greg's done a great job delineating that value that we have, because we're different to the market because we are a single package sterile kit. There's not a lot of those out there. A lot of these sets that come out are inside of a big thing you have to sterilize every time. Maybe your plate's a sterile package. Once you decide what you're going to use, you open that, but all your instruments and stuff, well, all that stuff's in one kit. And so that's new to market to some extent. And so it really is that process for FDA clearance made it harder because we had suture inside with the metal plate, and you had to find a sterilization process that would work that you didn't tear up the suture.
Right.
So we got that across the finish line. And so now the VAC stuff we put together is pretty strong. It's a good argument. Like you said, it's a new product. And I think we've entered several markets fairly easily, but there's still several markets that are doors shut. I can tell you one, HCA, if you have a surgeon inventor, they just shut you down. We're not going to take any products that a surgeon invented, which I don't understand.
No.
But, I mean, I guess it's the philosophy that they feel like you're going to somehow rob them. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Who better to invent a product for patients than doctors who take care of them?
Then the most qualified.
That is exactly the way I look at it. I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense, but they're business types, they're making decisions.
You're right. I mean, it's a bit of a flawed philosophy. And I think about that a lot. And I've heard many times that a lot of it is, well, if there's any form of surgeon ownership whatsoever, and I'm like, well, that's not true, because you work with the bigs. Yeah. And there's tons of investors that are surgeons.
That's correct.
Anyway,
they got royalties on the product. So
don't put me on my soapbox.
But I would add on the VAC committee piece that you have to have a surgeon champion, right? I think we have a superior product. We can show significantly better outcomes. We're cost competitive. But if I call up a hospital in IDN and tell them all of that, I'm not going to get very far unless I have a surgeon champion, right? And so it all starts with the surgeon. Once we have a surgeon that's willing to take it to the VAC, we've yet to go to a VAC committee and not get it approved, which is great, except for the accounts like HCA, right? Where we have issues because we have a surgeon founder, surgeon owner on our cap table. Of course, there's some groups that tell you how to work with that, and it's just a reality for us. So we decided there's enough of these fractures and accounts to focus on outside of HCA. That's where our focus is.
Great.
I think if you're going to build a compelling value proposition, you must be collecting some data. Talk to us a little bit about the clinical success you've had so far, and then we'll get into some future extensions of the technology. So how's it going so far with your first cases?
It's been great. I probably have 50 or 60 cases of 180, and it's in my hands done very well. I mean, I guess I've taken an interest in trying to repair patella fractures. It's a challenging problem, so I want to try to get better at it, and I think I have. But it's gotten to a point where you can put these things together with some clamps and some K-wires provisionally, multifragmentary patellas. And it's not just a transverse patella. This plate works fine with multifragmentary patella fracture. But you got to piece those together first. So you'll need some independent lag screws, which we usually pick up off another set. Once we put that together and it's being held, we put our plate on top, and it's fast. I mean, you're exposed, and you just lay this plate on. It's a low profile. It's the thinnest one on the market. It's 1.25.
1.2. Yep.
1.25. Wow. But, again, this is not, you're not really trying to protect it from bending so much. It does have bending forces, but you're trying to protect it in tension. And metal that thick is still pretty strong in tension. So anyway, we put this on, and it takes literally all the drills, the lined up, they're angled, they're polyaxial locking screws, and you can angle them away from the fracture. You can capture fragments pretty easily. And then once you put that on, it's the suture technique after that are attached to the plate that are pretty easy to do. Anybody that knows how to throw a Krakow stitch, which I think we all learn in our residency, the inferior stitch, you run a Krakow stitch on each arm distal into the inferior patella tendon, and then you tie those together, and then the mechanism we have up top is a cinch knot essentially, and it's a slip knot. You pull on it, and it locks itself in place. It's like a Chinese finger trap, and you try to pull it apart, it gets tighter. And so the top stitch is usually just a single pass through a bunch of the quad tendon up top, starting out to one side pretty far, 10 o'clock, and coming across to 2 o'clock, and then latching it up. And then it latches to our plate, and then you do the same thing, you tension it back. Mm-hmm. It works pretty well. I've had probably 1 or 2 failures from one was an alcoholic who kind of went out and just did his thing. And the other was one that got infected in a renal transplant patient. So the mechanism didn't fall apart, just the plate got exposed and you had to take the plate out. So they do happen. But I think that would happen with any plate. It's not in that patient population. It's not perfect. So most patients I've had have done really well, and I'm pretty pleased with the results. So
as you've hit on the idea of the surgical technique itself, talk a little bit about the exposure. What is required?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking that, because it's paramount that you get an adequate exposure and enough soft tissue to cover your plate. So I've created a little video. I think Greg has it on our website, but it's a fascial pouch you have to do. So on top of the knee, there's skin sub-Q, and that's variable for all patients depending on their thickness. Super thin. But there's always a superficial fascia that lives on top of it. So you have to get that superficial fascia, and you have to elevate that all the way around, out past the patella. It has to be out medial and laterally on each side, lifted up so that you can bring that over the plate. And that's critical, the fascial. And you get that off the patella ligament, you take it down, just lift it off the patella ligament, and then you do your Krakow stitch, and then everything you're doing inside that fascial, subfascial area you've developed gets closed with the fascia on top of it. So I've never had, you talk about 2 and 3 layer closures. That's probably a 3-layer closure for me, a fascia first, sub-Q second, and then skin with nylon third. That to me is critically important. You develop that.
So what happens as it relates to y'all's ASC strategy? Because you mentioned already about it being single use. Is this something that really could take off in an ASC, or is it too involved?
No, it could. We're using it in the ASCs right now. The interesting thing with trauma is a lot of your trauma is going to the hospital initially, right? Yeah. So a surgeon usually sees the patella fracture in the hospital. And then depending on where we have it on contract and pricing, they might bring it to the surgery center to get it done. The nice thing for us being a small company with one product on the market right now is it's a sterile pack kit, right? Yep. So it doesn't have to live on the shelf at all these facilities, which allows us to manage the inventory a little bit better. And then also be able to bring it in, right, when a surgeon calls for it. And so that's helpful. So we're doing it both at hospitals and ASCs. I do want to go back really quick and address that data question that you brought up. It's interesting. When you look at patella fractures across the literature, you see reoperation rates north of 70% on patella fractures, and then you see them down less than 5%. But if you look into it, a lot of the lower reoperation rates, they're keeping those patients in full extension, non-load bearing for 6 weeks and extended periods of time, which come with a lot of other complications and a lot of issues. And recently, though, there was 2 articles that came out, which were very favorable for what we're trying to do. One was Dr. Scalaro out of the University of California, Irvine, just did a biomechanical study on our implant and showed a statistically significant reduction in the forces at the fracture site, which is what we're trying to do by offloading those deforming forces from the bone and connecting the extensor mechanism through the plate. That's what we're going for, is to try and create a better healing environment for the underlying bone under our plate. And that's what that study showed. So we're really happy with the outcomes on that. The second study wasn't on our plate. It was on the Synthes patella plate. It was the group out of MOI, the Missouri Orthopedic Institute in Melbourne, Australia. They looked at a couple of cohorts. One was a cohort of patients that the surgeon just used the Synthes patella plate by itself, and they showed a 40% failure rate on that cohort. And then they had a second group where the surgeons used the Synthes patella plate and then did something additional to address the soft tissue forces. And they did it in multiple different ways, but they did something to address both the bony fracture and the soft tissue. And then they were seeing an 11% reoperation rate with that cohort. I think just highlighting the importance of managing those soft tissue forces. And then to highlight, we've done a little over 180 surgeries now, and our system is designed to manage both the bony fracture and the soft tissue forces. And we're seeing just south of a 5% reoperation rate. So very happy with the clinical outcomes we're seeing so far.
That's great.
Yeah. How's the learning curve for surgeons using it the first time?
I would say it's pretty quick. I mean, the plating fractures they're very comfortable with. They know how to drill holes and put screws in and stuff. So that's not the point. And that's pretty quick. I mean, once it's reduced, it literally takes probably 5 or 10 minutes to get the plate on. The soft tissue passing, I think the Krakow stitch is pretty well known. And that probably takes another couple minutes. It's not hard to do. They understand that. The tricky part is our superior aspect of our plate. We have a one-pass suture from one side to the other, and there's a cleat on the opposite side of where the suture is. And you have to kind of put this suture, which has a split in it. It's got a little hole, so it's a little loop that you can kind of tuck underneath and pull tension on it. That's a little bit of a learning curve, and we have a video on the technique I use for that as well. So it should help them, but that's probably the only thing I can speak to. Greg, you've been into some other surgeries that you can speak to other pain points potentially, but I don't think there's a whole lot. I think it's a pretty easy learning curve.
I would agree. It's an easy learning curve, but I have to stress the importance of a rep that understands the product. And that's because of the uniqueness of our system. There's no other system on the market that is a sterile pack plate and screw construct with pre-attached sutures. So you're really combining that sports medicine type approach with your osteofixation. And most of your reps in the room are trauma reps. They're used to hardware. They're not used to the suture. And so I would say that higher learning curve isn't with the surgeon, right? It's with the rep, right? It's vitally important that myself or our CTO, Ryan Stafford, we get out there and work with our distributor partners, which we only have maybe 20% of the country covered right now. That's a big area of focus for us, is expanding our distribution. We have a chief revenue officer starting on October 1st. So exciting to get that up and running, because that's the learning curve, is teaching the rep the importance of the suture so that they can translate that into the OR. We have had a half a dozen cases where the surgeon was very happy with the plate and screws and then cut the sutures off just because they're like, oh, I don't need it. This is great fixation. And it's like, oh, that's the
shaking his head like, no, what are you doing?
So frustrating when you hear that. But that's us falling short on training our reps and getting it out there. So we know what we need to tackle, right? It's just a matter of getting the feet on the street and focused on that.
Tell us about the roadmap. Where you guys go now? After you've built a patella, you've got other similar avulsion type fractures. Do you have that roadmap laid out, or still hotly debated in the team?
Absolutely. So, I'll tackle it right now. There's a couple of different things. So first of all, we only have 20% of the country there with the patella. So there's a huge opportunity for us in expanding the patella and capturing more of the market for the patella fracture. However, with that being said, every surgeon that uses the Endeavor patella plate, the first thing you hear is, oh, I wish I had this for the olecranon. I wish I had this for medial malfractures. We need this for the greater tuberosity. You know what I mean? And so the surgeons are hungry for products, and our surgeon advisory board is chomping at the bit to get to developing. And so our priorities right now are the olecranon. We've got 2 implants for the olecranon that are close to design freeze. And then we were going to move on to the greater tuberosity next, but we pivoted a little bit and came up with several utility plates, which are really just some utility plates that could be used for avulsion fractures throughout the body. We think they'll predominantly be used in the shoulder and the hip, but they'll be used in other indications as well. So those 5 implants, we've got, I would say 90% to design freeze. And we're the only reason they're not at design freeze because we'd like to do a couple more cadaver labs and a little bit of iteration with our CAD engineering. And once we get the fundraising, that's the key thing, is once we get the funds in, we believe it's about 9 months and about $1.5 million to bring those 5 products to market. Yeah. And then simultaneously to that, we're bringing on the CRO to build out the commercial organization around patella so that we can see that ramp up of penetration once we put more products in their hands.
So does the IFU, so would you guys just have to do a letter to file with FDA for any of the other areas of the body? Or what's the trickiness here?
I don't think we can get that easily. I'd love for it to say yes. I think maybe the suture part we'd be able to, but you still got to have a plate that's going to be strong enough to hold the forces. So there's plenty of plates on the market for a lot of those fractures he just mentioned. Yep. So we have to show equivalence there for sure. Okay. But I think we could do the IFU for the suture attachment because when they did the patella, FDA, they wanted us to do worst case scenario. So they actually made us do the patella without the suture. With the suture, it's going to make it better. We showed that. The biomechanics shows that. So you got to kind of look at worst case scenario. So that's a big problem.
Part of my watch, could we potentially do something? We could. I spent the last 16 years with Synthes and Johnson and worked on a few acquisitions. And that's a negative, right? If you haven't gone with the full FDA clearance and then they're looking to integrate it into their portfolio, that can be a knock. And eventually we do plan on exiting the company to a larger strategic. Yeah. And so I think it's worth the time and energy to make sure we go through the FDA clearance with these products and make sure we've got the right design history files and quality systems in place down the road. So we plan on going the FDA clearance.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's so important for other founders who are listening to what you just said, Greg, is so important around being patient and doing it the right way, because the last thing you want is to get into due diligence with a strategic and your design history file is not pristine, because that's what they need.
They got to remediate, and they hate that. So
they don't want to remediate. They don't have time, and they don't want to spend the money, because remediation means they're pulling people off of projects that they want to do themselves to fix your problem. So I think you guys are being very smart and experienced, obviously, to do this the right way and be patient.
Yeah, for sure.
It's hard to be patient.
It's a virtue that I don't usually have, but I'm definitely.
I hear you.
I don't think any of us do.
Well, tell us a little bit about, so you guys are raising a round, I presume, and it sounds like you've made a lot of progress to get to this point, bootstrapping and angel and friends and family. How's it going now, and kind of where do you see that going in the near future, and how can we help?
Absolutely. So first, I just want to start and say Dr. Norris and Dana Funk early on, they did bootstrap it, raised through friends and family. $850,000 on a pre-seed round, really to get through their patents, their IP, and the initial FDA clearance. And then they raised another $1.2 million in order to get through manufacturing and bring the first product to market. That's when I joined the company, is after the first product was on the market. We had 100 kits on the shelf, but really no money in the bank, right? We needed to commercialize the product. And so we did a $2 million convertible note, which we closed earlier this year. And that $2 million note was able to bring on 3 people. We have our chief technology officer who helped design the implants and manages quality. Dana's on as our COO. And then I'm on as the CEO, managing distribution. And then we've made the offer to a chief revenue officer who will be joining here in 2 weeks. Now we're doing an $8 million equity raise. And that is really to fuel the expansion of the portfolio by adding those 5 products, expanding the commercial organization underneath our chief revenue officer to be able to grow with the product that we currently have. And then also expand our IP portfolio. We have 9 patents right now, which is great, but I think that the technology and really the suture plate interface has applications even outside of avulsion fractures and orthopedics. I used to lead global product development and marketing for the maxillofacial portfolio. Enough. There's maxillofacial indications for this. There's definitely podiatric indications for this. There's a lot of different indications for the suture plate interface, which is the core of our IP. So I see us developing a suite of probably 30 to 40 different patents, different indications along these lines, and then seeking an exit. So back to your question though, on the fundraise, we've got about 4 million of the 8 million soft circled. We're really looking for a lead investor to consolidate the terms. Right now we have our term we have a estimated pre-money valuation of $17.5 million. And then we're raising $8 million with that valuation. That's where we're
good to know.
What are investors telling you about your current status? Were the ones that say yes, the ones that say no?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's interesting. I spent a decent amount of time in this space, right? And building organizations and leading global product development. I was a VP for the Midwest area for Synthes, trauma and extremities. What I haven't done is raise money, right? So coming in and raising funds has been a learning curve for me. And the $2 million we raised were all from, again, I would call it friends and family, mostly surgeons and distributor partners, people inside the space that understand the value of our product and our solution, that were investing in the company. So right now what we're seeing is the VCs have been challenging. And the main reason why they're challenging is because we're not looking to be a unicorn. We're not targeting $1 billion valuation. Right now, we're estimating our pre-money valuation on this raise around 17.5 million. And we're looking to grow our revenue to about 15 to 20 million in the next 3 years, and then exit to one of the strategics at or exceeding the industry average, which is 6.8 times revenue. So we're looking to get our investors at 6 to 8x in the next 3 years, which I think is really appealing to the family office networks, to individual investors, but it's not large enough for a lot of the VCs. So we're seeing traction right now with some of the micro VCs that are looking at smaller investments, also with some of the state-sponsored type VCs, government-sponsored VCs and family offices. And that's where we're getting a lot more interest and traction, if you will.
Have you guys tried to pursue any grants?
That's a good question. I'm not sure where that fits in. I mean, we've talked about it. We've talked about establishing loans as well, but we haven't really pursued either one. We're still looking for investors to buy into an equity position.
Sure. And with as slow as it's been to bring money in, at least the last 4 years, it's been ridiculous.
Yes.
That makes sense to make that the prime focus.
Yeah. With us having a product on the market, that focus has been on investors and driving revenue. I think
which is the best form of fundraising, by the way.
That's correct.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do think there's an opportunity for grants, especially, both Dr. Norris and our veterans, you know what I mean? I think there's military applications and trauma to everything we're doing. That is an avenue that we have not gone down, but I think is probably an opportunity that we should look at and evaluate. And we haven't made a focus yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Outstanding. I think you guys are in good shape. And I think if you look at the data, VC data, a 6 to 8x return 3 years out is well above their internal rate of return for the median VC.
No doubt. Those guys, for the most part, are saying we want 3 to 5 and 3 to 5. That's what they say. And it's like, well, would you take more? You know? But the thing I was going to stress, and I just wanted to say this real quick, is that now that we're back in the fall meeting season, are you guys going to be at any of the meetings? Of course, OTA, it sounds like.
Yep.
What else?
So right now we'll be at MNVC coming
Awesome.
up, which is great. Just a outstanding meeting for our group. You know what I mean? I really enjoy that meeting. And then we'll be at OTA, and then we'll also be at Academy. So
Great.
those are the 3 meetings that are coming up. We also probably cover some of the smaller regional meetings. The Southeast Fracture Conference is one we've done every year because Dr. Norris is affiliated with that. I was just out in Hawaii at the Western Orthopedic Trauma meeting, which was a solid meeting. We're putting together our surgeon advisory board. I'll try and target the different meetings where we've got surgeon advisors on. But the priority is going to, in this fall, when into the spring, will be OTA and Academy.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on the progress you've made. I mean, it's been really a blueprint for other surgeon founders. I know that you feel like you made some mistakes in waiting on strategics. And I think sharing that lesson is going to help others to say, you know what, I'm just going to keep my head down, focus. Yeah. Because again, both the VCs and the strategics are looking to de-risk and have shifted to the right. We don't love it, but it is what it is. And it's just good to stay focused. So if people are looking to learn more about Endeavor, where should they go?
Well, EndeavorOrtho.com is our website, which has got our contact information on it. I'm more than happy on this website to share my contact information. If anybody would like to reach out to me, it's just Parranto at EndeavorOrtho.com is my email. I get the question all the time, what's it like to be the CEO? And I'm also the receptionist, right? If you call the 1-800 on our website, my cell phone rings. So you wear every hat as a startup CEO, but more than happy to share that contact info.
Awesome.
I think just one last thing I like to add is, as a surgeon inventor, I never envisioned myself as being a surgeon inventor or an entrepreneur. I think I'm a pretty critical thinker, but I would encourage anyone out there that feels a pain point somewhere in their practice and they think there's a better mousetrap, that they really should make an effort to try to figure that out. Because I went into this thing, I got to be able to help my patients better. And it kind of ballooned into this, I'm going to build up a company or a plate system that is going to help. So you never know where it's going to go, but you really should take heed of the pain points you see and listen to them and try to figure out a way to get by it. And that'll lead you to places that I never thought I'd be, but that's where I'm at now. So it's been pretty cool, pretty good journey.
Well, by default, because all of us are pretty much in the same age categories, pretty much. We all came into this business with the intent, even as a surgeon, right? By default, back then, you were very entrepreneurial in what you did and how you did it, right? I'd say it's a different animal today for anybody.
It totally is.
But, it's sort of ingrained in our spirit.
Yeah, that's true. You can look at it that way for sure. Yeah.
Well, congratulations. We're going to be watching you guys closely, and all the best. And thanks for joining us on this episode of the MedTech Jam Session.
Thank you, Mike and Chris.
Thanks a lot. Great job.
See you at the OTA.
Good.
See you there.